Hi, this is Robert Clinkenbeard and David Anderson with the Commercial Landscaper Podcast. We're going to take 20 minutes of your life to deliver some amazing content from accomplished leaders and business owners to provide you some value, to help you scale your business, to become a better father, and push yourself to higher goals personally. We hope you really enjoy these shows, and we really encourage you to share this with your friends and network to help share these messages. I'm super excited to announce a new partnership we have with Site Recon. If you're tired of measuring properties, the Site Recon platform fully automates the measurements so you can then focus on sales. Think measurements, think Site Recon. This is Robert Clinkenbeard and David Anderson with the Commercial Landscapers Podcast. I am very excited today to be joined by Shannon Swift. Shannon is the owner of Swift HR Solutions. So welcome today, Shannon.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So Shannon, tell me a little bit about you, your company, and how you started the company.
So we started 17 years ago. We just celebrated our 17th anniversary, and it was just going to be me, actually. It was going to be a lifestyle business. I wanted to work with some early stage companies and provide outsourced human resources for them. And here we are 17 years later. We have 4 business lines. We have 35 people. We've supported over 500 companies on the human resources side, where we look and feel like the VP of HR for them. And it's just having so much fun and growing like crazy.
That's good. That's great. Tremendous success. You said 35 people now working for your company?
Yeah, and we have across 4 different business lines. So we have a talent group that provides fractional recruiting services, and then we also have a leadership team that provides workshops, as well as a leadership cafe product that allows companies to self-manage their leadership development programs.
So let's jump into that. That intrigues me the most about the leadership development. How did you start that? Did you feel as though there was a need out in the marketplace?
Yeah, so my whole career and background is in early stage growth companies. And so what I would see is coming in as one of the first executives of an organization, we would start to promote people into leadership roles around 50 to 70 employees. And I looked around and there was really nothing that I could find to bring them along in their new roles and give them tools for leadership. And so we created what we wish we could have had when we were in-house VPs of HR. And then our workshops, we actually started out doing workshops in probably about 10 years ago. And they were limited to 20 people physically in person. And with this last year, it's really opened them up completely. We've created, all of our content is now virtual. We had somebody from Florida in a workshop recently. We had one from the Netherlands signed up for a workshop here in a couple of weeks. And so we're able to really have a high impact. But really, back to your question, it was really kind of a need that we felt that we had when we were in-house VPs of HR, and we wanted to make sure that we were creating good leaders across all of our organizations.
Very cool. Yeah, I think as David and I have been talking to other owners of companies, we've recognized that a lot of people get promoted into their higher positions, into a leadership position, but then just be left to try and figure things out. So it's
right.
something that we've recognized as a definite need there. David, I'm going to jump to you for your questions.
Thanks, Robert. Congrats on all your success, Shannon. That's great. So, question, what is kind of going off of what Robert just said, you see in so many industries where there's training, for the next position, if it's a trade, if it's, I'm in marketing, you get your certificates from Google. But, from what I've seen, a lot of companies don't focus on training for their people to be the next leaders in their organization. Have you seen that? Can you talk about the importance of that? And, maybe, the effects of not doing that also would be really good to hear.
Yeah, you bet. I think, one of the primary reasons that employees leave a job is because of their manager. And so I think that definitely most companies don't spend enough time really focused on developing that side. They promote people that are really technically very able and are successful. And so getting into especially as the company scales as well. So you're building layers out where you had a very flat organization, and now you have to accomplish things through other people or through teams. And so one of the things that the biggest benefit that I see in terms of really focusing on leadership development is twofold. One is the actual skills, and it's everything from building accountability, decision making, conflict resolution, planning, strategy. So there's a whole lot that goes into just the leadership side, but then the common language that develops when you have a team of leaders that are learning together. And so I'll give an example. So we have effective communication is one of the areas that we'll focus on. And so people have a communication style. So giving them some self-awareness about what their own style is, and then how that's effective or not effective with people with other styles. And so you'll hear people that have gone through the leadership training, and they're talking to each other. It's like, well, I'm a director style, so so this is what that means. But then now you're a relator, so I need to change my style to be effective with you. And so or conflict resolution styles. Hey, Tom, you're going into compete mode. Back off. People will start to kind of they all know what that means because they've gone through it together. So really the two benefits I see of focusing on leadership development is building leadership capacity across the organization. Happier employees is the end result, right? You've got people there's clarity, there's the communication is open, they know what they're supposed to be doing, they know how to resolve issues. And then there's just also this teamwork that happens because they have that common language together.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So your training programs, there's a lot of training programs out there. People might maybe kind of trying to get up to speed or more. Tell me about your 2 or 3 favorite books on the leadership training, and especially what you just talked about, the importance of communications, and that a team needs to be speaking the same language. I'm a fan of 5 dysfunctions of a team. Do you have some recommendations for the listeners on some other things they can do on their own?
Yeah, 5 behaviors is actually one of the workshops that we put on as well, and so a huge fan. So the very first leadership book that I ever read was Leadership is an Art by Max Dupree, and it was very early in my career, and that really laid a foundation for my leadership path throughout my whole career. And it really was focusing on servant leadership. I think it's also been a big part of my EO leadership style, is to really support people, remove obstacles, but really, it's more of a servant leadership mindset. So that's probably still one of my favorite leadership books. And then, from Thriving on Chaos was another one that was a big impact on me early on. So there are just so many great resources out there. Our Leadership Cafe program is a leader-led, so they're hour-long. We train somebody inside of an organization to actually train to facilitate the training. So a leader-led program. We have a PowerPoint deck, a facilitator guide that walks them through how to present the information. And at the end of each of those, we have a resource list. And so it's a variety of different YouTube videos, Harvard Business Review, books. So we have all kinds of resources for people to go deeper. But yeah, oh my gosh, there's so many great books and resources around leadership.
No, that's great. I'm glad you listed them all, because there's definitely some good ones in there. But so if somebody comes through your course, and what would be the next steps where you recommend that person? You can't just obviously take your workshop and then suddenly say they're an expert and go back into the workplace. Is that continuous coaching? Is there some way to ease them back in? Is there some type of mentorship? How does that normally work, or what would you recommend?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And when I was the in-house vice president of human resources, and I was trying to look for resources for my newly promoted folks, I would send them to a full day course. They would come back speaking a foreign language that nobody else had, and they were excited, but then it would just fizzle out because nobody else was sharing that experience. And so that's one of the reasons that we, really the primary reason that we developed Swift Leadership Cafe. So we have now 20 different modules, and it's intended to be an ongoing leadership development program. program, because you can't have one and done. It has to be kind of a continual learning process. And so we have our clients will purchase a subscription. It's just a monthly subscription, and they get access to all the modules that we have. So we actually just released our 20th one. We're adding 1 to 3 modules every year. And so they can have either a cross-functional team inside of their organization or just a group of their own department. But we, again, we're actually delivering this through the leaders to their teams, and it makes it very, very effective. And that really is the key, I think, is that ongoing. So, every month we're going to focus on one topic. It's 1 hour, so we're not taking people away from the organization. It can be delivered just like this virtually. And so they dive into it together, and then the facilitator will give them an exercise, a leadership activity at the end. So they basically get homework to say, okay, now we're going to take what we learned today, and we're going to put it into practice over the coming month. And so we come back the next month, and okay, now we're going to dive into the next topic. But first, let's talk about what happened when you put that into practice last month. And so they share. So it really has this ongoing. It's an ongoing just part of the organization, and so it's not just a single event. It's a continual development process. As new people come into the organization or get promoted, you can bring them along so that they fill in the content that they missed, and so it really is a very effective way to do this.
No, that's great. What are some of the challenges that you see? I love the idea of your cafe and that ongoing development, but I've also come across situations where people say, well, I'm too busy, or you give people the links to access the resources, and then suddenly things will come up. So what are some of the things you see come up, and then how do you handle that?
Yeah, so I totally agree. And I think if it's virtual learning where they're just getting on doing it themselves, that it will never hit the top of the priority list. And so, so really that was, again, the model that we put in place is it's just incorporated into a staff meeting. And so it's just 1 hour and people are doing it together. It's a process where there's interaction. So you're really involving them and using the company's vernacular, weaving in actual situations that they're dealing with, and making it very, very practical. So I think, small amount of time, so an hour, regular cadence. So it's once a month we're going to do this, and it's in a group. And then there's the follow-up, the accountability in terms of, okay, talk about how you put this into practice. And now let's keep going together. So I think what I've seen not work is just to send somebody a link to a workshop and have them do it themselves. It's in isolation, or if you're taking people off site for long periods of time, and they're very distracted and frustrated because they know that they've got work to do. And so being able to do it in a 1 hour meeting, regular cadence, and then that accountability to each other, I think is really one of the ways to have an effective leadership development program.
Cool.
Shannon, along with some of the communication stuff you talked about already, what are some of the most, the people that are listening to the podcast here are owners, people in the industry. What are some of the, most common leadership mistakes people make when they promote somebody up into a role through the ranks? What do you say? What do you see some of the challenges the most of?
Yeah, I think, so a couple of different things. It'll be hard to just do one. So, I think one is that, you promote somebody because they're really good at their job and they're comfortable, right? They've mastered whatever it is that they're doing. And now you've given them new responsibilities. And so the tendency is going to be for them to want to, when they get out of their comfort zone, is to go back to comfort. And so not being able to delegate and to work through others, I think that's a skill that really needs to be really focused on. And then somebody that was a peer last week is now, they now report to me. And so that dynamic of that relationship and about the boundaries around that. And then I think, people tend to model the leadership styles that they've seen, whether they're good or bad. And so it's really kind of opening, broadening their exposure to different leadership styles, what's effective in what situation, and really being deliberate and intentional about how they want to lead people. versus just, again, kind of going with their gut and whatever they've seen done, and the management style that they've had for the, that they've received, just passing that along. So let's stop, really think about, who's my team, what do they need from me, and how can I be an effective leader for them, and what do I need to do to shift my own style, and my own how I'm showing up. So those are a couple of areas that I see really where new leaders struggle.
Good. Robert, I have one more question. So when I have talked about this with others also, is the importance of a transition plan when somebody comes into leadership role. You just kind of said it. It's really hard, awkward, and all of that, where one day they're your coworker and the next day they're reporting to you. And talk a little bit about, it's not a light, leadership isn't a light switch, I say. You don't have somebody come in the next day and flick the switch and now here you. Yeah. Well, it usually fails. I don't know about you, but my bulb usually burns out when I've done it that way, flicking that switch. So talk a little bit about, maybe some of even the steps that are important, or I'm assuming you agree, I guess, but, the importance of that leadership transition plan.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think really helps is for, definitely to provide that new manager with training, right? And just give them some good leadership basics, and then having them meet with their team and really talk about, their leadership style, what their team can expect from them, and what they expect from their team. And so being able to kind of like right out of the gate, set that expectation about the relationship. And then, really talking about how each person wants to touch base. So, how frequently do they want to do one-on-ones? So really, I think being very, again, I'm going to go back to that word intentional about how, really laying a foundation of, okay, this relationship is, this is what the relationship is going to look like. And being very transparent and candid about what people can expect, and then hearing what their expectations are as well. So I think that just rather than just jumping in and trying to manage through, I think making it more of an event early on is a way to really set up the relationships for success.
Yeah, Robert, just before I kick it back over to you, I think that word expectations is so important. It's all about setting expectations. So yeah, that's a great point. Totally applaud what
and
you're
managing
saying.
expectations ongoing.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's also, the mindset you said before, I'm sorry, I forget the name of that book, but the servant leader versus the command and control leader, make or break you. So, that's maybe, Robert, something you want to go a little bit deeper on there too. But I think that's a really important thing to instill in the education part of leadership.
Yeah, and actually, I was going to go a slightly different direction. I love first of all, the word, intentional. I think you have to be intentional about those types of moves and transitions. But one of the things you touched on earlier, you've obviously got 5 different divisions within your company, but you deal with a lot of those smaller companies who perhaps don't even have a leadership team. And I've heard so many people that have, there may be this, you've got the owner, and then it goes to maybe 7 or 8 or 9 direct reports, and they keep, they say, well, what do I need to do to step away from the business or go to that visionary role? And they start to think about developing an org chart or build a leadership team. How do you tackle that? You must come up with some ideas and experience about how you make that transition.
Yeah. And I've had to go through that myself, right? It was just me, and now it's 35 people. And so really going through that evolution. But so my whole career has been with early stage growth companies. And so growing from, 8 to 110 employees or 2 to 150. So I like small organizations. And one of the things that I do, I'm visual. And so I keep the org chart in front of me all the time. And so I can kind of predict, where, okay, this person is getting too many direct reports, and we need to talk about, what makes sense in terms of how we're going to scale this, and who are the emerging leaders on his or her team that we want to really think about putting into a lead role. What does this look like a year out, 2 years out, 3 years out, and then working backwards from that. I can look at an org chart and tell you pretty immediately, like, okay, here's some issues that are going to come up. A lot of times when you're just starting out, everybody's doing everything, and then as you start to be able to work through others, weaknesses really start to show through. And so somebody that excuse me, was effective with 1 or 2 or 3 direct reports is not effective at all in terms of growing that team. And so do they need to go back into an individual contributor role and helping people to gracefully make those changes? So I think it's the org chart is really an important component for me, just to be able to really kind of see how things are laid out. Does it make sense? And visit it very regularly. Yeah, so I think that's one of the things that I love is figuring out how we get from here to here, and do that effectively and set people up to be successful along the way.
Cool. So my final question before we let you go here, Shannon. So you've got a lot of new people moving into starting their own businesses, especially during the last year with the pandemic. What would be your best 3 nuggets of advice for those either new business owners or those up and coming business owners who are trying to make that transition into, doing $500,000, $1 million in revenue? What would be the things that you would best advise them on?
So that's a really broad question. So I'll see if I can tackle that. So one is to really focus on your customer. And, I've seen other business owners that have started out and said, oh, we made it through year 1 and here's all the stuff that we did. And I don't hear any mention at all about the customer. And so that was one thing that right out of the gate, my very first customer, I was so fortunate. I had a customer 6 weeks before I started the company. He said, hey, I heard you're hanging your shingle and this is what I want it to look like. I need your help. And so he set our model and we went forward with that. And so when you listen to the customer and really focus on what they need and just let it evolve from that perspective, rather than coming in with I know it's going to look like this and we're going to do this and this. Be a little bit open-minded about and listening to your customers' needs. And then I think as you grow the team, culture is so important. I mean, for your brand early on as a business, focusing on who are we as a business and who are we not, and then being really true to that, being willing to walk away from something that is going to put you in a situation that's going to be counter to who you are. So really listening to the customer, being focused on your culture and identify and articulate that early on, hire to it. All of everything that you do should be consistent with your culture and your values and creating that brand. Okay, so if I was going to do a third nugget, I think just really being open and listening to your team, listening to your customers, listening to what's going on outside of your immediate sphere, and being able to respond and react as a business to changes that you might need to make. And the pandemic has just been such a great example of that. People that were so hard and fast and thinking that they couldn't operate a certain way, and realizing, oh my gosh, we really can. And not only can we operate that way, it's better in some ways. So how do we keep that as we come out of this? So I would say those are the 3 things.
No, those are excellent. Well done. Put you on the spot with that one. David, any other last parting words from you?
Nope, I am good. Some good input. Those last 3 nuggets were very helpful.
Oh, awesome.
Well, Shannon, really appreciate your time today. It's been some great shares talking about your leadership and your 3 nuggets for those up and coming new entrepreneurs. So really appreciate your time and thank you. And if people wanted to get in touch with you, Shannon, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so our email is shannon@swifthrsolutions.com. So simple. And then our website is swifthrsolutions.com, and you can see about us and our team, and would love to talk to anybody about entrepreneurship or HR or anything else.
Cool. Okay. Well, thank you, Shannon. Have an awesome day.
All right. You too. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hopefully that was pure dead brilliant for you today and you got some great takeaways for your business or your personal life. This is Robert Clinkybeard along with David Anderson, and we'd love to get you and your friends to join us in our future journey. 2 quick things before you go, listeners. Check out our website, commerciallandscapers.com. You can subscribe, you can share with your friends, but more importantly, check out our new sponsor, Site Recon. It's going to make your sales process, your estimating way easier so you can spend more time in your proposals. Thanks everyone. Cheers. Bye.